Hello everybody, welcome to OCHD and welcome to the batch review for the 19 million download celebration on Jumputi Heroes. This is a bit tricky because there are 3 limiteds to talk about, which is not normally something we have to deal with, and one of them goes away before the other 2, and then before we're also going to be knowing about what's happening next event, what's coming next event. And there's a lot of reprints and stuff to take into account. It really is a tricky time to work out what you should be spending your rubies on. But we're going to talk about whether these units are actually worth it, or whether they're just, you know, shiny, cool new units that are tempting, but a bit surface level. We'll start off with the first unit of the event. Currently the only new gacha unit for this event, at least available right now. And that is, of course, Sasuke Uchiha, Susanoo Awakened. And this unit we've been waiting for a little while now. And I suppose we should get into the kit. So, inflicts 511% damage to one enemy. If they're afflicted by bleed, inflict an additional 40% damage. Bleed is becoming more common. More and more common. So, that's not too bad for setting up. And you're going to get 555 total. Not bad damage. At the start of the next turn, convert a random bubble to a skill bubble. We know about this, the skill bubble generation. Typically speaking, not a very big fan of the skill bubble generation unless it also comes with some kind of bubble manipulation on support. Because I think by itself, it doesn't really bring enough to the table to actually be worthwhile. There might be instances where you could justify it, I suppose. I mean, it's not bad by any means. I just feel like it's not super exciting. And like I said, I've always said the best unit for this skill bubble generation next turn, in my opinion, is Kenshin, because he gives you the extra rainbow bubbles as well, and he just becomes an absolute menace to deal with because he generates so many bubbles. He gives you so much control of the board. That is more of a PvE thing. In terms of PvP, as it stands on Sasuke's skill, it is fine. For 2 turns, boost this unit's attack by 11%, and for 1 turn, reduce damage received for red team members by 130. So, speaking strictly for PvP, because I don't think he's very good for PvE on that, just based on that ultimate attack alone. Don't think he's very good for PvE. He's okay. He's usable. He gives himself a 2-turn attack buff, so that's going to be for Sasuke and whichever unit you have next turn. And he will reduce damage for red team members by 130. Is that it? Is that 100? They didn't add anything on about Tower. I don't think they added anything on about Tower. That's 130 is nothing, surely. I mean, I guess you could say that's a PvE thing. 130 is at least a little bit more in terms of PvE. Have I made a mistake there? No, just 130. That is... that's pointless. It's just pointless. For 1 turn. Why did they even include that? I don't even... That's just taking up extra space on the skill. That part is just irrelevant. In my opinion, that is irrelevant. We'll talk about the rest of the skill. Attack boost by 11% for 2 turns is okay. Creating a skill bubble next turn is okay. Total damage output when you include the bleed affliction, it's okay. All around, I really just think okay. Not getting me excited. Not an ultimate attack that is getting me excited at all. The passive, this is where things get a little bit tricky. I'm not even sure how well you're going to be able to see this on the video. That's how much extra info they had to put in here, how small I had to make it. Reduce bleed damage received for this unit by 4,810. That's, you know, that's good. Like I said, bleed's becoming more common, so bleed resistance is good. Boost this unit's attack by 15%. Unconditional, we like that. And then there is 2 parts to the next section of his passive. One for if your enemy is a special class unit, and one for if your enemy is a tank class unit. If the enemy is a special class unit, then Sasuke will only need 3 less skill bubbles, or 3 less bubbles to make a skill bubble, and damage will be reduced by 1000 80k in tower. Only if you're against a special class team member. If you're against a tank class team member, then it will only be reduced by 2 to create a skill bubble, and the damage reduction will be 2000 in PvE, 80k in tower. Now notice what I said before about the damage reduction on his ultimate attack. 1 turn damage reduction, 130. 100, and I have to just double checked it. Well, at least double checked on the info they put on the news post. Compare that to his support, which if you're against a special class unit is reduced by 1000 in PvE and 2000 if it's a tank class enemy. And then in tower, 80k, whether it's special or tank. Now, admittedly, yes, those are still restricted because if the enemy is not either special or tank, he gets nothing. He just gets the first line, reduce bleed damage and boost this unit's attack. Okay, by itself, that is not particularly strong. With those additional parts, again, does sort of feel like a PvP thing more than a PvE thing, simply because it's very specific. You have the tower reduction, which is significantly higher, as you would expect it to be. I think his support, no, sorry, his passive, the way it's built up, is interesting. And it does kind of put you in a position where if you are against a special class unit, if you are against a tank class unit, and I'm thinking more of a PvE standpoint here, then he is going to be a pretty good unit for that. Because you're just going to require less bubbles as standard. I am all about that. I really like that. Having it restricted to just those 2, you still get the bleed damage received reduction, which is good. You still get the unconditional attack boost, which is good. I think his support definitely has some upside to it. It's a little bit over the top for him to essentially have 3 different passives. One for if the enemy is special, one for if the enemy is tank, and one for if the enemy is anything else. I think that's a bit over the top, and you know, no bubble manipulation, but I suppose that's okay. I just think, all in all, this is not a particularly exciting unit for me. I think he can do some very good damage in PvP. And I think with bleed becoming more and more common, you know, if you're going to be using a unit like Kinnikuman, and you're going to be inflicting bleed damage, and there are new units like Rukia that do freeze and bleed and stuff like that, it is becoming more common. So getting that 551% damage is going to be pretty good. You get the additional skill bubble, which means not only will you get the 2 turns 11% attack boost, you will have a skill bubble ready for the next turn for your whoever you have in PvP. And for PvE, that basically means that you can special loop and keep on getting that attack buff. So you can keep that for, it'll be 22% essentially. If you keep hitting the specials, it'll be 22% attack boost. And the damage reduction is, even in PvE, I can't see an upside to that. Definitely a strong unit. If you're a big fan of Sasuke, and especially if you enjoy PvP, I think you can get some good use out of him. I personally do not find him to be a particularly exciting unit, and I do not find his skills to be particularly appealing to me. Yeah, I feel like there's a bit of lack of forethought on the devs' part on this one, but we have seen it in the past where they have done this, and then later there's been small tweaks, small buffs. So maybe he'll get some small tweaks and small buffs. Maybe during the Naruto event, he'll get like a small buff or something. I don't know. But I'm not a fan of his kit. I'm not a fan. The support. Remove the 1 strongest ultimate attack damage boost from all enemies. That's pretty good. Recover 750 HP, 30k in tower. That's pretty good. And for 2 turns, reduce the number of bubbles required to create a skill bubble for red and yellow team members by 3. Okay, and for 8 turns, boost the ultimate attack damage of red and yellow team members by 18%, 31% in tower. I do find it interesting that it's 8 turns. When in tower, you can only have 4 turns in tower. There is no 8 turns. There are 8 turns in Unity Battle, so I mean, I guess that's okay. I guess that's fine. 31% is alright in PvP. 18%. I mean, all in all, it does come together quite nicely. You will notice if a unit is a limited, and they don't create a skill bubble, there is going to be a lot to their support. 20 turn cooldown, of course, and removes the ultimate attack damage boost from all enemies. Again, wording on that is a little bit misleading because it's ultimate attack damage from all enemies, and there is literally zero circumstance during which you could remove an ultimate attack damage from more than one unit because you can't face multiple enemies in PvP, and in PvE they don't use ultimate attack damage buffs. So I do think that is a little bit misleading. Again, if they do add that in the future, then this will be very good. But it's still good. You're removing an ultimate attack damage buff. You're getting 30k heal. What is it? 2 turns skill bubble reduction by 3. You know, the more I look at it, the less I am a fan of this. I think, you know, removing the ultimate attack damage boost is definitely the strong point of this special, and I think it goes downhill from there for me quite quickly. You are getting the additional heal, so there is kind of an element of, if you were, say, using this maybe turn 1 when you're using a double tap, I don't know if you would use it in that. I'm not really high up on the meta for PvP, but assuming you had a double tap first turn, and you use this so that you would get the maximum amount of turns for the ultimate attack damage boost. For this turn and for next turn, you'd have the skill bubble reduction. You wouldn't want to use it first turn though, because that heal would effectively be useless first turn. So maybe, I don't know when you'd use it. This is where it gets tricky. I don't know when I would use this, but I mean, maybe some people that are more up to date on the PvP meta could tell you. But personally, this is not a unit I would use. This is not a unit. I mean, if you watch the news video, you will see I did do the 500 for him because Shiny New Limited, can't help myself, but it's not for me. All in all, I'm looking through the whole kit and I'm not really seeing much that excites me at all. I do appreciate that they've tried to do something different with a passive, and I think that can definitely have some strong points to it. And if you are against the stage where there's like a green unit that's inflicting bleed damage, and they are either special or tank class, Sasuke would be one of the first units in your team, 100%. But I don't know. It's not, personally, this is not for me, and with good reason I am not summoning going all the way for him. Next up, we'll talk about the second limited, which is Kirisu Sensei. Let's have another look at her kit. I have to refresh my memory. So 480% damage, and absorb the highest ultimate attack damage buff. So similar to version 2 Susanoo, I believe. The 2 turns inflict 2000 bleed damage per turn to all enemies. Additional bleed damage equivalent to 6000 damage. So it's not a particularly high amount, but like I said, bleed is becoming more common, and if you wanted to use this to set up a Sasuke in PvP, get him his additional damage, that might be one way to do it. So maybe I don't know. Bleed is definitely becoming more common though, that is for sure. And the 2 turns, red bubbles have a 100% chance to appear as a heart column paint bubble. We have discussed before how I do really appreciate that heart bubbles are becoming more common. Heart paint bubbles have become a thing recently, which is very cool. And we've always said we would really like a healer limited that did something special with heart paint or with heart generation on their passive. And Kirisu is kind of the closest we have to that now. She will create a heart column paint bubble with her ultimate attack, and her passive also creates some heart bubbles. Reduce bleed damage received for this unit by 4390. Boost this unit's ultimate attack damage by 15%. Before this unit's turn, convert 2 red bubbles and 1 block bubble to heart. I prefer this passive so much more than Sasuke's. I get it in terms of Sasuke's appeal. Against certain enemies, he will be a lot stronger. He does more damage as standard. He does more additional damage. And you have to factor in the fact that if you're against a tank enemy or against a special class enemy, tank or special, I think it was, he gets all those additional buffs, which is great. But Kirisu's passive is fairly straightforward. There's no restriction to it. Bleed damage reduction, boosted units ultimate attack damage by 15%. Both very nice. And you're getting bubble manipulation, including removing one block bubble, turning it to heart. I like it. I like it. I think her total damage output is obviously going to be lower, but I think she has more all-around utility. I mean, maybe removing the ultimate attack damage is pretty good. I'm not a big fan of that on most units, because it does feel a little bit like this is a very PvP thing. But if you omit that from her ultimate attack, 480% damage, plus bleed damage, 2,000, 6,000, which is not particularly high. And then you also get the heart column paint bubble. I wouldn't say she's particularly strong outside of, you know, that additional thing for PvP. In PvP, removing the ultimate attack damage buff, that is very good. That is very good. But for those that don't like PvP, that is a big thing to remove from the ultimate attack for PvE. So, something to consider, certainly. But I love the passive. The passive is very nice. It's straightforward, gives you some bubble control, which I really like, and 2 buffs that are unconditional. Very good. So I quite like her as a frontline. I do quite like her as a frontline. Her support, convert the left bubble below the center... Christ. Convert the left bubble below the center bubble to a skill bubble and boost its blast radius by 1. Convert 5 random bubbles to blue. And convert 2 block bubbles to blue. Recover 3000 HP, 170k in tower. Not bad. Not bad at all. You're not only getting a skill bubble in a set position, you are getting a boosted skill bubble. You're getting 5, 6, 7 bubbles to blue, including 2 blocks, and 3k heal in PvE, 170k in tower. Only on an 8-turn cooldown. Obviously, the cooldown, you do have to consider that doesn't really matter in PvP, because it's not like you're going to wait until it's available again and use it again. But in PvE, you just get a 3k heal. Yeah, you know what? Not a bad support either. I do quite like Kirisu's kit all around. I'm still not a big fan of ultimate attack damage removal. I know that it has great upside potential in PvP. I just feel like it's too restrictive to... It's like any units that remove curse. And it's like, yeah, cool, you remove curse. So if there's a curse stage that's really hard, you're going to be really good for it. Curse doesn't exist in PvP though. So you have to have something else to bring to the table for PvP. And this is the case for her. It's like, yes, that's great. You remove ultimate attack damage buffs. That's great for PvP. But you got to bring something else to the table for PvE. And I think she does have a decent amount to her kit to make her worth using. So I quite like her. I'm not going to be summoning for her. But I think if you're a fan of Kirisu Sensei and you want to go for her, not bad. Not too bad at all. And the final limited, the one that I have confessed that I will be summoning for already, is Sena Kobayakawa from iShield 21. Let's talk about his kit though, because I don't know that it will be for everybody. Inflict 473% damage to one enemy and absorb that enemy's highest attack buff. Now, that is a lot less damage. Like, if you compare that to Sasuke, that's almost 100% less damage when he's got his maximum buff. But you do absorb the highest attack buff. And for 3 turns, guard 50% of all counter attack damage received for this unit. Now, this is interesting because we are seeing a lot more units that have some kind of resistance on ultimate attack. It used to be the case that resistances were a passive thing. But in this, for him, it's on his ultimate attack, and it does give you counter guard. I'm not a very big fan of counter guard, and I mean, yeah, sure, there are some stages that use counter that are a bit annoying. Yes, there are some units that can be somewhat strong in PvP that use counter. Bear in mind, there was sort of, not really a resurgence in counter, but it wasn't as strange to see counter in PvP when they started introducing supports that added it on. I still don't think counter's a big enough problem that I need 50% counter guard as part of the ultimate attack. 50% essentially does cut it down. Well, I mean, it cuts it in half, but that is a big cut. So, okay, that's pretty good. And compared to other resistances where it's like a set number, like even if their counter stack was somehow incredibly high, you're still cutting it in half. So it's... I'm not a fan of the guard, the counter guard. Yeah, the attack buff absorption, I am a big fan of, because as I mentioned before with Kirisu Sensei, ultimate attack damage is only really applying to PvP. Attack buffs, no. PvP and PvE. So very happy with that, at least. But the damage is quite low. And the counter guard is not really for me. The passive, though, reduce the number of bubbles required to negate bind for this unit by 11. So he already deals with counter attack. He is now also dealing with bind, which is pretty cool. But again, bind doesn't apply in PvP. So if you're looking for a PvP unit, bind does not apply in PvP. It can only be applied in PvE. Boost this unit's ultimate attack damage by 12%, that's unconditional, that's nice. On turns 2, 4, 6, and 10 of the adventure, reduce the number of bubbles required to create a skill bubble for this unit by 3. I'm still a little bit torn on whether that's good. There's been a few units that have had something similar to that. I don't know if it's good. I don't think it is. I mean, it's alright. It's something, but it's like if you're playing on like a drawn out stage that goes beyond 10 turns, it's useless. If you're playing in PvE, you're restricted to using them in slots 2 and 4, though a lot of the time, a lot of people don't really create bubbles in PvP. They just use the supports to create them. So, I don't know that it's really a PvP thing either. And then when you connect 2 or more bubbles with this unit, at the end of the turn, recover 700 HP. Again, that's kind of restricted to a PvE because 700 HP is nothing in PvP. So I don't think he has a particularly high upside for PvP. I think in PvE, having a unit that reduces bind by 11 is good. And the other little parts can have uses here and there. And obviously on stages that have counter, the counter guard is good, yes, granted. But to PvP, all he's really bringing is the attack buff absorption. And then that's really it. Like, he has a couple of little bits that give a slight benefit, but unless they're going to start releasing some ridiculously powerful counter units, it's not really for me. I am summoning for him because he's one of my favourite characters, and I'm very happy with the sprite. And that's kind of how I do things when I'm summoning for units. But if you're wondering if you should summon for him because he's good for PvP, no, not really. He does have some upside on PvE, but again, it's a bit of a messy kit, really. I am still really torn on the buff removal on ultimate attack, especially because he doesn't have much else to his ultimate attack. So I don't know. I don't know. And then his support, convert 1 green bubble to a skill bubble, convert 6 blue bubbles to yellow, convert 2 green bubbles and 3 red bubbles to heart, and for 2 turns, weaken all enemies by 30%. We've had a few units with these supports, and I've tried out a few of them, and I've come to decide that I'm not a fan of them. I think the 30% weakening for 2 turns is cool, but it makes an absolute mess of your bubbles on the board. And there can be some use to that. Like, it's not like bad with a full stop. I just don't think it's. I think it's a little bit counterintuitive to actually playing the game sometimes. Like, if you're going to be weakening, logically that means you're about to burst. If you're about to burst, why would you mess up all the bubbles on the board? Doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, maybe it does help a little bit because you get rid of a green bubble. 6 blues, which would have been useless, you become yellow, which is good because you are a yellow unit. And then 2 green bubbles, 3 red to heart. I guess that's for recovery. I don't know, but it's I've tried using it a couple of times. It's not really for me. All in all, I'm not a very big fan of his kit. I do like the attack absorption. I think it's nice that that works in both PvP and PvE. But I think what's been sacrificed in order for him to have that is the rest of his kit is not particularly inspiring. I think he does have very good upside on PvE. But if you're one of these tower menaces, I don't know how much use he's actually going to get. I really don't. So if you need to know which unit to summon for, I actually, out of all the limiteds, Kirisu probably has the most tantalizing kit for me. I think in terms of what she brings all around, she is quite nice. The fact that her ultimate attack absorption is more PvP leaning is not enough to deter me from saying she's actually a very strong unit, even in PvE. Yeah, there you go. And the final gacha unit is Akira Toya. Now, I will say up front, regardless of what his kit does, you shouldn't summon for him because of reasons I mentioned in the news video. The upcoming pool update, the choice ticket update middle of the year, and the fact that this will be the last standard gacha unit of 2021. They've only released one during this event with good reason, and that is most likely because they know people are saving for the pool update. So just gonna have to wait on him, I think. Even if you're a big fan, even if you like his kit, you're just gonna have to wait on him. But speaking of his kit, let's talk about it. Inflict 433% damage to one enemy, and for 2 turns boost this unit's attack by 40%. So pretty standard hitter, not particularly complicated ultimate attack, but 433% damage plus a 40% attack boost means he's going to be hitting quite hard for a standard gacha unit. If the enemy is balanced class, boost this unit's attack by 50%. And I think there was another character that had this. I think it was Yui Kobayakawa, where it's just like, if you're against balanced class, this guy can hit. And this guy is gonna hit. If the enemy is balanced class, he is gonna hit. At the start of this unit's turn, if the enemy is green, guard 15% of all damage received for this unit. I think the type guard does have strong points to it, but I mean, it's really more of a PvP skill, and I guess that would be where you would be using him. I guess the intention is that you would use him in PvP. The potential damage is considerably higher than you would expect for a standard gacha unit. So it's not bad. It's not bad. I don't know. Maybe he will get used as a frontline in PvP. In terms of PvE, I mean, he'll do well against balanced class stages. He's going to be doing good damage. And even on normal blue stages, he's still going to be doing good damage. The counter guard's effectively useless in PvE, but what did I call it? Did I call it counter guard? The type guard, whatever it is. It's not that useful in PvE. But yeah, he's quite interesting for a standard gacha unit because there's not a lot to his kit, but the damage you're going to get out of that is going to be quite high. The support, convert a random bubble to a skill bubble and boost its blast radius by 1. Convert a total of 4 red and block bubbles to yellow. Reduce the number of turns of guard on all enemies by 1. And for 3 turns, boost the ultimate attack damage of yellow team members by 15%. Very, very good. We've been having more units like this recently. You're getting a skill bubble. You're getting a total of 4 bubbles, including blocks converted to yellow, which is this unit's type. And reduce the number of turns of guard on all enemies is obviously very good. And the ultimate attack damage boost for 3 turns for yellow team members. There's a lot going on there. It's a pretty standard support, I think, for standard gacha units now, but very, very strong still. And I think all round his kit is not too bad. I can't, in good conscience, recommend you summon for him, but I could definitely understand if he was one of the first units on your priorities list for the choice ticket update. So very, very cool. And then all that we have left is free-to-play units. Naruto is the first unit available during this event, and here's a bleed unit. I did find it interesting. For those of you that either haven't read Naruto or you want to brush up on your Naruto history, part of the quotes on Naruto's skill, especially the passive, changes to the nature of the Rasengan. That specifically comes from sort of a conversation Naruto has with Kakashi, and Kakashi basically saying, look, I'm the copy ninja, I can do the Rasengan, but I've never been able to sort of add my traits to it, my nature to it, the electric nature of my chakra to the Rasengan. And that is the exact same problem your dad, Minato, had trying to add his element, his nature to the Rasengan. And then Naruto goes ahead and manages to add the wind nature to the Rasengan to make the Rasen Shuriken. And as you can see, ultimate attack is called Wind Release Ultra Big Ball Rasen Shuriken. So of course, he will inflict cyclone damage. No, he doesn't. He inflicts bleed damage. I don't know why. I think his damage is going to be good. I think in terms of a Transcendent class unit, he's going to be very easy to obtain. And I think he's going to be a pretty decent 99 luck unit. I don't know why I said decent like that. 313% damage plus the bleed damage. Admittedly, the bleed damage is not super high, but he is a free-to-play unit. You can use him as a 99 luck lead, and it will allow you to set up for other units that maybe do boosted damage to bleed, or if you want to use bleed weakening or whatever. Very, very cool. His passive boosts his unit's attack by 18%. Unconditional, very nice. During turns 1 to 7 of the eventer, reduce the number of bubbles required to create a skill bubble for this unit by 1. And still not a big fan of turn-restricted passives. I don't think I ever will be a fan of turn-restricted passives. But it's not too bad because it's turns 1 to 7. You get one less bubble for a skill bubble. For a free-to-play unit, it's okay. I guess most stages you would be using him on, most stages where you would use him as a 99 luck lead, it should be over by turn 7, I think. So it's okay. It's okay. You know what? It's okay. It's hard to review like the Transcendent class units because they're so easy to obtain. You're going to be able to get them to 99 luck. So if their kit is even remotely good, it's like, yo, if you're a new player, go for it. And I think that's kind of the idea here. If you're a new player, just recently starting, and you need a strong 99 luck lead, he is not bad at all. And he is not that hard to obtain. So pretty nice, pretty nice. His support converts a random bubble to a skill bubble. And it gives bleed damage. But an incredibly small amount of bleed damage. 100 bleed and additional 2000 damage. So I guess that's because he's creating a skill bubble as well. And when you consider the fact that he is a Transcendent class free-to-play unit, his kit can't be too strong. But I guess like a skill bubble plus bleed, especially when you think there might be stages where you do want to set up like a character like Sasuke who does boosted damage to bleed or whatever. There's certainly some potential there. I don't think it's particularly strong because the damage output's not going to be that high. But for a 99 luck lead, I think Naruto. I think Naruto's pretty good. And I like that they've given him a little aura costume. If you're a new player, he could be your guy. He could be your guy. Then we have Hikaru Shindou from Hikaru no Go. Transcendent class event yet again, so quite easy to obtain. Inflict 322% damage to one enemy, and for 3 turns, yellow bubbles had a 50% chance to appear as a blue X paint bubble with a blast radius of 5. It's okay. It's okay. His damage is obviously not going to be that high because he's a Transcendent class unit, but I think the additional element of the blue X paint bubbles, it's okay. There's some potential there because it's for 3 turns. Obviously, it's only a maximum of 2, but I mean, if you're stacking specials, if you're going turn after turn after turn on specials, that's going to continually come out. If you use him as a 99 luck lead, I guess that kind of works because it's not. Some units will give paint bubbles of a different type, and I tend to find that is very disruptive. But Hikaru's giving same type bubbles. I mean, if he's a 99 luck lead and you're using some blue units with some bubble manipulation in their passive abilities and stuff, yeah, there's some upside to using him for sure. His passive reduces bleed damage by 200, and boosts this unit's attack by 18%. So pretty straightforward. Again, bleed is just taking over. It's just taking over. I think he's not bad, especially if you're going to be using units like Kenshin and Kagura and Toshido Hitsugaya and stuff like that. It could work. It could work. Having him as the lead and getting all those extra blue paint bubbles, it definitely could work. The support, convert a heart bubble to a skill bubble, and for 5 turns poison all enemies for 60% damage per turn. Setting up poison for 5 turns is pretty cool. There aren't that many units that can capitalize on that, like doing boosted damage to poison, or you know, there's not really any way to boost poison damage and stuff like that. But down the line, if they do give poison some more support, could work. It is poison all enemies as well, which is alright. Converting a heart bubble to a skill bubble. I have been caught out by this before. When it converts a specific bubble to a skill bubble, it can be a little bit problematic, especially if you're not really paying attention. Like, for a long time, I was using Luffy and Ace as my slot 1 in PvP, and then I would have supports in either slot 1 or slot 2 that would convert a heart bubble to a skill bubble, and obviously there's none on the board because they convert them all to rainbows. So it needs some forethought with your team planning and stuff, but not too bad, not too bad. And yeah, his front line, again, there's some upside to it. For a 99 luck lead, for how easy he is to obtain, there is some upside. Next up, we have Fumino Furuhashi, the new version for Christmas. For 1 turn, reduce damage received for red team members by 600. And for 1 turn, boost the attack of red team members by 20%. For 2 turns, boost the attack of DPS class team members by 10%. So she's a frontline buffer. She's okay. I think it's okay. Again, it's sort of the idea, if you're using her as a 99 luck lead, then you will get these buffs that will carry on to the rest of the team, and the rest of the team can do their damage. So if you've got a red team and it happens to have DPS class team members in it, then 30% buff, 40% buff at max stack, that's okay. That's okay. And you get the damage reduction too. So she's alright as a frontline support. Her passive, when this unit is attacked, the following turn boosts this unit's recovery by 36%. It's alright, but it would be better if she was a healer. Like, if she was a healer or she was doing recovery based damage, that would be potentially kind of good. But the fact that she's not really got any healing in her ultimate attack, she's not great. It's not great. When your HP is 55% or more before this unit's turn, convert 1 block bubble to a heart bubble. That's good, at least. It's not great. It's not great, but it's better than nothing. It's better than nothing. I don't think she's a particularly strong front line. I think there's some possible use for her if you don't have many frontline buffers. You want to try one as a 99 luck lead, but I don't ever see myself personally using her. She might be able to help certain people beat some tricky green stages early on if they're like a beginner. But I don't think she's going to help that much. She's not going to help as much as some of the like free-to-play healers and stuff that we've got, or the, you know, the weakeners and whatever. So I'm not a big fan of her frontline. Her support, convert 2 random bubbles to rainbow, remove blind from red and yellow team members, and reduce the number of bubbles required to negate bind for red and yellow team members by 4. That's a little bit confusing, but blind is not that common. Blind is where they cover the whole board in darkness. You can't see anything. And bind is where the bubbles are locked, and you need a certain amount of bubbles of a certain colour to break the bind. I do like her support actually quite a lot, simply because, okay, only 2 bubbles to rainbow is not a lot, but you are dealing with 2 different, albeit less common, debuffs. It's nice. It is a nice support. It's a nice support. Good utility is what we should say. Good utility. But I think, generally speaking, I'm not a big fan of her kit. And then the final unit, Takeru Yamato, from iShield 21, a unit I was quite looking forward to. Let's take a look at his kit. Inflict 360% damage to one enemy, and if the enemy is poisoned, inflict an additional 40% damage. This brings us back to Hikaru, who inflicts 5 turns of poison to all enemies. There's your use. There is your use for Hikaru. If you use him as a support on a stage where you've got Takeru as the 99 luck lead, Takeru is going to get 5 turns additional damage, with 3 turns no additional damage, and then by that point Hikaru is recharged and you can use him again. So not bad, not bad. And that total damage should be 400%, which is not bad for a catastrophe class unit. For 2 turns, boost the attack of special and balanced class team members by 5%. That buff is fairly inconsequential, 10% at absolute max, and it only applies to certain classes, but fair enough. His passive reduces bleed damage received by 2500 and boosts his unit's ultimate attack damage by 18%, so no restrictions, and once again bleed damage is taking over. I think as a frontline, he's not very good. He's not very good. The bleed damage reduction is good because it's unconditional. Ultimate attack damage boost, again unconditional. That's quite nice. Poison is so uncommon. So yes, in the situation where you do use Hikaru, if you like, there might be some stages you could cheese with that, where you could just constantly be spamming poison using supports and Takeru's doing additional damage, and that can work. Very, very far from optimal, even for a 99 luck lead, in terms of damage. And his ultimate attack's little buff at the end, not particularly high, and it's restricted to certain classes instead of to blue type. So I just feel that it's not particularly strong, and trying to set it up to be strong is fairly counterintuitive. His support, reduce the number of bubbles required to negate bind for this unit's buddy by 9, charge your legend summon engaged by 11%. There are certainly situations where that could be useful, but it is quite niche. It will only apply to certain stages with bind, and it will only apply to stages with bind where it's specifically important you remove it from one specific unit. And I'm not saying there aren't cases where that happens. There is. There's certainly some stages where you can't get enough damage using the bind reducing units you have, so you might need to bring a unit that doesn't reduce bind and you have to rely on the supports, in which case, yes, of course, this can work. But generally speaking, not a big fan of his kit, and there you have it. So the highlights of this event, I would say, free-to-play Naruto. I think he's very, very good. For a beginner free-to-play unit, he's very, very good. And in terms of the gacha units, I do think Kirisu Sensei is the highlight. Some people may disagree. Some people may say Sasuke. I think Sena, there's some work to be done there. Certainly some work to be done there. Not horrific. Certainly not horrific. But if you're planning to use him in PvP, certainly he needs a little bit something extra somewhere. And Akira, an interesting kit. But we shall see. Moving forward, please do not summon this event. If you're going to summon for him, do it with tickets when he's free to play later in the year. Not technically free to play, but in 2022, when you can get him from the standard gadget pool, when you can get him from tickets, when you can get him from the choice tickets around summertime, that's when you should go for him. Do not spend rubies on him, please. But that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. And we will be back with another video very, very soon.